Good evening, everyone. And, of course, welcome back. Yes, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a great day. You know, there's something very wrong with your elections when Democrat election workers keep stealing the encrypted election keys, and then we have these surprise upsets. Yeah, nothing to see here except blatant theft, illegal activities, and fraud. There was a snake. You saw a snake, honey? What kind of snake? Was it a black racer? That's probably the only way that you would have noticed it, because it was so fast. All right, guys. So, we're obviously going to be talking about elections, but there is a lot more than that going on today. If you haven't yet, do me a favor, hit that like button. Hit the thumbs up, hit the red pill, whatever it might be. Share the show, that would be awesome. And get ready for lots of news. What? I am so annoyed because I need to shut down my browser and then delete everything. Anyways, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn because we're going to get into it right about now. All right, my friends, welcome back. Thank you so much. I hope you guys had a great weekend. I know that Lisa and I did. We do have a lot to discuss. And first of all, it would appear that there may be a coordinated attack on America's skies. First of all, yesterday, private airspace over President Trump's very location was breached very briefly by someone who was not responding to air traffic control. So this has been classified as a security incident, although it was determined later that there was no danger to the president or anybody else. But there was a temporary ground stop and the forced deployment of military aircraft at Palm Beach International Airport. This is where Air Force One was scheduled to fly back to Washington, D.C. The president was aboard. Now, initially, there were some reports on social media that there may have been a drone or something like that that had breached the airspace near Air Force One. However, it would appear that there was a pilot who was flying a small aircraft and he briefly crossed into this no-fly zone around the president's location. Now, according to the White House press pool, President Trump's motorcade departed the Trump International Golf Course at about 2:15 p.m. And while they were there, there was an aircraft that was out of communication. So I don't know exactly what the problem was, but this guy was not communicating with air traffic control. Now, anytime you've got a plane that's in a no-fly zone around the president, the boys in the F-16s get a little bit twitchy. And so they were forced to fly up and intercept whomever this person was. They were able to get his attention by blowing off some flares, and apparently that did it. He snapped his head up and he said, "Oh, shit, I probably should have my radio on." So he turned his radio on, and they were like, "You need to get out of here because the president is on the ground." I don't know exactly what they said to him, but they said, "Hey, this is a no-fly zone. Get out of here." He left, and there was no damage or danger to the president. Now, in addition to that, what is your take on Chris Bledsoe? I don't know Chris Bledsoe. You're going to have to give me more information on that. I don't know anything about Chris Bledsoe. All right. However, the same cannot be said for two different flights that both received a little bit more attention yesterday. First of all, there was an American Airlines flight that was heading from New York to Chicago. This was diverted early on Sunday morning to Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport, DTW. There was a disturbance with a passenger on that flight. Initially, this was reported as this unscheduled landing. The photograph that you see right here was taken from a person there on the ground. They saw this plane land. They saw the FBI. enter the plane. This was a plane that was leaving John F. Kennedy International Airport right around 9 a.m., heading to Chicago O'Hare. It was a Boeing 737 MAX 8, so pretty big airplane. It landed at about 11 a.m. at DTW. Now, once it was there, the plane was immediately isolated on a remote section of the tarmac. Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane, and we can see the video footage that I just mentioned right here. Federal agents, police surround plane at Detroit Metro Airport. All right, so somebody says my show is not airing on YouTube. I'm looking at it right now, and it actually says that it's airing on YouTube. So the fact that it's not airing on YouTube, I don't know what to say about that. It looks to me like it is. I can tell that nobody's watching, so that means that it must not be. Let me go ahead and turn it off. And if it doesn't work on YouTube today, then I will live, and hopefully you will all live as well. Because it's supposed to be working. It's definitely supposed to be working. I'm just not going to worry about it because it's a relatively small number of people that watch over on YouTube anyways. So let me see if I can just chat on YouTube. If YouTube isn't working, come to another platform. I wonder if that chat actually went through. Let me go and just check something. God, I hate this. Because it just breaks everything up. Okay, it's totally... it's private. I wonder if that chat... Why in the hell is it private? That's definitely not what's supposed to be happening. Content... how interesting that they made my show private. Public. Publish. Okay. Well, now it works. Okay. All right. Getting back to the video. All right. So not much to see right there. Wayne County Airport Authority Police responded to this disturbance. The FBI field office in Detroit was also dispatched to the scene. There was a statement that was made by FBI Detroit spokespeople shortly after this diversion. They said, I can confirm the personnel from FBI in Michigan are present at DTW Airport located in Romulus, Michigan. They did conduct law enforcement activities. There was no current threat to the public at this time. American Airlines Flight 2819 diverted to Detroit due to a disruptive customer. The aircraft landed safely. Law enforcement, medical personnel met the flight, and the customer deplaned. We appreciate our customers for their patience and thank the crew for their professionalism. As it says, the customer was removed. Passengers were later deplaned and held in the terminal while authorities conducted their investigation. There were no injuries. As of Sunday evening, neither the FBI nor American Airlines had released any additional information about the nature of the disturbance. We don't know the passenger's identity yet or whether there were any criminal charges. I would hope that there were criminal charges. If you were on a flight with somebody and you're supposed to go to Chicago and they're being a dick and they have to land in Detroit to get this guy off of there, hopefully we're going to learn the exact circumstances. But strangely, yesterday, there was another plane that was also grounded, also isolated. This one, however, was declared as a potential hijacking incident, this time in Atlanta. Now, this was just a few hours after the event we talked about in Detroit. But Frontier Airlines this time, Flight 2539, this was an Airbus, a much smaller plane, A320. This was going from Columbus, Ohio to Atlanta, landing at Hartsfield-Jackson. This is one of the busiest airports in the nation, one of the ones to have been hit particularly hard as a result of the TSA shutdown very recently. This time, the plane was, the trouble was at around 5 p.m. Now, here we can see passengers were forced to depart on the tarmac, and shortly after touchdown, the crew publicly declared that this was a potential hijacking with security concerns. Now, again, it was directly and immediately isolated away from any important airport traffic. Video and tracking data shows the plane remained isolated on the runway for nearly 2 hours as law enforcement and airport personnel were able to respond. Now, according to crew audio from the incident, a black male passenger seated in 3A allegedly threatened to kill the passenger next to him and then also claimed that there was a bomb on board. And we can listen to that report right here. It looks like I may have to take myself out of reader view.
Frontier Flight 2539.
Frontier Flight 2539.
Okay, Frontier Flight 2539 have information about the level 3 threat, not level 4 threat, but level 3 threat. I'd like to relay.
Frontier 2539, Laetrile, go ahead.
A black male, approximately 5'9", sitting in seat 3 Alpha. He's in his seat. He's already threatened to kill the lady that's sitting next to him, and he's saying that he has a bomb on board, approximately 58 to 60 years old.
Understand, level 3, black male, 5'9", seat 3 Alpha, threatening to kill the lady beside him, says he has a bomb on board. Any details on the bomb?
No details as of right now. That's as much information as we got. We're running our checklist. Once we find more information, we'll get back to you.
All right, we're going to move you to plan on Sierra Golf 6 shortly. And are you able to move at this time?
Yes, we are able to move at this time. We'll plan Sierra Golf 6.
Lima, start Mike Delta 20.
So I can already see what people have caught. He was sitting in first class, Site 3A. So obviously this was a better seat than perhaps the ones that you may have been sitting in the back. Clearly, black male, 58 to 60, threatened to kill the woman sitting next to him, and then also just happened to drop casually that he had a bomb on board. Now, the crew treated it as a potential hijacking situation. They got the flyers out of there. They searched the aircraft. They checked all of the carry-on bags. And from what I understand, there was no bomb. This guy just appeared to be a major dick. Now, neither Frontier Airlines or the FBI nor Atlanta airport authorities have released any type of official statement about the exact sequence of events or whether or not there's going to be any charges. I would hope that this guy does get charges, and the incident is still under investigation. But strangely, this is the second in-flight disturbance to require law enforcement response in the exact same day. That is not normal. So let's take a look and see what the professionals might be saying. Well, this right here, this account is the Air Marshals National Council. They bill themselves as an association dedicated to vigorously representing federal agents and making sure your voices are heard loud and clear in Congress. So this is an organization that has, in some official capacity, a connection to the Air Marshals. The Air Marshals are the men and women who are sent on flights to keep people safe. They would be the ones who would intervene in a situation like this. Now, they say there have been multiple incidents today on board American flagged aircraft. It is not a coincidence. We have been screaming about the flagrant mismanagement of the FAM program for years. The current director ordered FAMs to surveil our DNI Tulsi Gabbard and took FAMs off flights, took their firearms away, and put them on deportation flights guarding non-Americans. The number 2 in the agency has been disciplined and transferred for allegedly threatening to kill a female FAM. He was also in charge of a program where the IG found several insider threats were never investigated. The culture is broken and no one is listening. So I'm not certain if they're suggesting that these two incidents are directly connected to each other or just the fact that these two incidents happened in the first place, because normally the type of screening that would have been done to determine these dangers before they got on board these aircrafts, or perhaps there were just no air marshals who were present on these flights to begin with. Definitely the type of thing that we're going to want to keep an eye on. But it doesn't give me any sort of confidence in flying in the near future. I'm going to be going to Nashville here very shortly. Good evening, Zach and Mrs. RP. Thank you. Who cares? Filter Dog, thank you for the can. And Trump won. Thank you for the cookie. I appreciate you. All right. Now, putting that aside, we do have this little zinger from John Solomon. John Solomon was at CPAC all weekend. It would appear he was one of the only people who was at CPAC all weekend. And he goes into just a little bit more detail about the intercepted communications of Ukrainian government under Volodymyr Zelensky discussing their plans with USAID workers. Now, he also directly states that there is an ongoing investigation. So I just wanted to catch up with the latest.
But we're going to cover one thing we broke overnight. A lot of you probably heard about it over the course of the day. The United States government, the National Security Agency, intercepted conversations of President Zelensky's government in Ukraine in 2022, late 2022.
So the fact that it's the NSA, that is the first new bit of information I'm hearing.
Conspiring with federal workers at the USAID to come up with a plan to take $200 million of USAID money. That is your money, folks, taxpayer money, route it through a series of transactions, move it into the United States, and launder it into Joe Biden's 2024 campaign and the Democratic National Committee. We have the intercepts for the first time. Tulsi Gabbard's team was willing to declassify them. There is now an investigation underway, beginning with USAID, to look at who was involved, whether any crimes were committed, and if that is the case, to refer that to the FBI in the next few days. Those declassified documents up at justthenews.com. You can go check about it today. Members of Congress have been clamoring all day to get their hands on the documents. I expect Tulsi Gabbard to make a statement later tonight on where things are evolving in her investigation. But we've gone from the era of weaponization where the prime...
Well, to my knowledge, we have not yet gotten a statement from Tulsi Gabbard, but let's just head on over to Just the News because I haven't seen the documents themselves either. And I've been waiting for those to drop. I don't believe they're actually out. I think that John was perhaps a little bit eager in his prediction that those documents would be available. And it does not appear that they are, because that would have been front page, front and center. Now, of course, Tulsi Gabbard at the director of national intelligence, she is the one who raised the alarm about these communications. Not certain why the NSA didn't say anything, but many people have suggested recently that President Trump has had a lack of confidence in Tulsi Gabbard. Last week, we talked about a targeted attack against Tulsi Gabbard for her supposed anti-Semitic behavior. I thought that that was so interesting, considering that this information about Ukraine working with USAID and the DNC was just coming out. Thought it was interesting that she was also targeting Adam Schiff. Of course, she's also targeted a number of other people in past administrations, currently and previously within government. Number of them have something in common, and I thought that that is why Josh Hammer came forward to tell us about this so-called anti-Semitic attack. Now, Josh Hammer also appeared at CPAC over the weekend, and his whole thing was about targeting anti-Semitism inside Trump's government. I don't care about anti-Semitism. I'm going to be really, really clear, because anti-Semitism has nothing to do with the corruption that we have going on here in the United States of America right now. I'm not going to ascribe people's criminal behavior simply to their religious or political affiliation. I know that it comes in all stripes and all colors. I do, however, think that the specter of anti-Semitism is often used to cool the conversation when you are identifying people who are likely involved in the type of deep state activity that we've seen in the past. So, interesting that a member of the press corps asked President Trump about his opinions on Tulsi Gabbard over the weekend. Let's take a listen.
We have a lot of great candidates for this.
Do you still have confidence in Tulsi Gabbard, sir?
Yeah, sure I do. Sure. I mean, she's a little bit different in her thought process than me, but that doesn't make somebody not available to serve.
Is she on the same page as you?
I would say that I'm very strong in the fact that I don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, because if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it immediately. I think she's probably a little bit softer on that issue, but that's okay. Some people are. Most people aren't. Most people are saying thank you very much for doing what you did. They are decimated right now. They're going to give up nuclear weapons. They're going to give us the nuclear dust. They're going to do everything that we want to do. And you know what? They're going to go on and maybe have a great country again. But if they don't do that, they're not going to have a country. They're not even going to have a country. So she's softer on that issue, but I have other people, not too many. That's an issue that we've had great support. You saw the CNN poll where Trump with MAGA, and I think MAGA is most of the Republican Party, is 100% approval. In fact,
All right, now, we are going to talk more about Iran later in the show because this is basically almost over. But I want people to hear what President Trump said there. Just because he may have people working for him who might have a slight difference of opinion, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have confidence in them. It doesn't mean that they're willing to serve. It doesn't mean that they're not going to do what President Trump asks of them. Because when you serve at the pleasure of the president. And if you have disagreements, well, those disagreements are private. You are going to do what your commander-in-chief asks of you. And I think Tulsi Gabbard has done a tremendous job on every single thing that she has hit on thus far. So I'm not worried about Tulsi Gabbard. I'm just going to sing it from the rooftops. Josh Hammer, I have zero confidence in Josh Hammer. That man means absolutely nothing to me. Didn't know who he was until very recently, and he's an editor at Newsweek. So in no way do I believe that Josh Hammer speaks for any portion of the conservative movement that we are a part of. Now, we do have an update on on Kash Patel and the ongoing investigation into Eric Swalwell and his Chinese spy, Fang Fang. Now, if you'll remember some time ago, just about 2 years ago, Fang Fang had been located. We found her on X. I emailed her, or I DM'd her through X. We talked about that message here on the show. She said that eventually she would come on the show only when the time was right, but the story that was being spun in the media was not exactly the way that it happened. And I said at that time, I could see how her recollection of events could be true at the same time that she could be a spy looking to gain access to American politicos and then, of course, hand that information over to the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, every Chinese citizen that comes to the United States is obligated to bring back information and give it to the CCP. But that doesn't mean that there aren't elements here within the United States government, that would be the U.S. deep state, that would be looking to capitalize on the weakness of someone like Eric Swalwell and then use that to control that person at a deeper level. So FBI Director Kash Patel is looking to release those investigative files that were determined to have existed previously, the investigation into that relationship between Democratic representative and current gubernatorial candidate for the state of California, Eric Swalwell, and his Chinese love interest, Fang Fang. Previously, it was reported that the intel community had a classified report detailing Swalwell's intimate relationship with his Chinese spy and honeypot. Now, according to Axios, Fang Fang was a bundler for Swalwell and a number of other Democrat candidates. It's also suggested that she may have had sexual relationships with a couple of other Democrat politicos as well, and that she was a spy. And, of course, she was going to do what China asked of her. Now, a source on Capitol Hill had previously confirmed to the Federalist that Swalwell did indeed bump uglies with Fang Fang. Now, despite the Chinese spy scandal, Eric Swalwell remained on the House Intelligence Committee thanks to Nancy Pelosi, and he had access to some of the nation's most highly classified information. Now, for anybody who can't see how the CIA and the FBI would be able to capitalize on a relationship like that, Eric Swalwell on the Intelligence Committee would be an excellent vector for introducing certain types of disinformation or to control the flow of information going to other members of the Intelligence Committee. It would also be a way for bad actors within the FBI and the CIA to ensure that Eric Swalwell was voting certain ways on different types of legislation. So They compromise Eric Swalwell with the knowledge that he had had sex with a Chinese spy, and they tell that Chinese spy they want her to also give them information. Fang Fang claims that that's the reason she left the United States of America, because she was approached by the FBI and the CIA. They told her that they still wanted her to go ahead and have sex with Eric Swalwell and just do what she was going to do. The more compromised Eric Swalwell would be, the easier it would be to control him by both the FBI and the CIA. This is not something new, and if anybody here has been paying attention to the inner workings of Washington, D.C. for any length of time, you know that the intelligence community deals in the currency of blackmail. Now, back in 2021, Breitbart had reported that Joe Biden was actually hiding that classified report on the exact nature of the sexual activities between Fang Fang and Eric Swalwell. That report, which intelligence and national security sources familiar with its contents who spoke on condition of anonymity told Breitbart News, contains details of the nature of that relationship with alleged certain sexual acts that allegedly were being performed by them together. Now, other sources, however, would not provide any more detail on the exact nature of those acts. Now, personally, I don't really care what type of sex Swalwell and Fang Fang were having. I'm already convinced that that was the case. For those who have seen the details of the Swalwell case, it was shocking that Pelosi and Schiff so willingly kept him on the Intelligence Committee, even for nakedly partisan lawmakers like themselves. Let me also say, in the exact same way the CIA and the FBI would enjoy the use of a compromised representative, Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff would also enjoy the exact same thing. They could then control the votes of Eric Swalwell. They could control the support that he would give on bills. I mean, everything that they could ever possibly want. They would have Eric Swalwell in their hip pocket. And then even after they leave the House of Representatives, they could essentially raise Eric Swalwell in their own image. I mean, he was also from California. So that means once they were to leave the House or to leave the Senate, they could still have Eric Swalwell doing their bidding. There is nothing more that these people love than controlling others. So if Kash Patel is going to release this stuff, then we may be in for a real treat here very soon. The potential release is part of the Trump administration's aggressive push to investigate Eric Swalwell. The man is compromised. He's a vocal critic of President Trump. He's also one of the leading Democrat candidates for governor. If we can deep six that before people get to the ballot box, we've already tried, believe me, with the fact that he is not a resident of California. He's not fit to serve. He's also not legally able to serve in that position. But it is a little unusual for the FBI to release case files like this that did not result in criminal charges, but maybe they should have resulted in criminal charges. And they didn't result in a criminal charge because the FBI and CIA of that era wanted to make sure that they could keep Eric Swalwell under their thumb. If necessary, they could call on him for favors. Now, FBI leaders have even discussed sending agents to China to see if they can speak with Miss Fang Fang, and they think that she might even have more damaging information about Eric Swalwell. So people familiar on this matter have no authority to speak on it, so we don't have anyone who's actually come forward to give their names. I think this will all probably end up resulting in something in the near future. Can't wait to see it. Very excited to hear just how dirty Eric Swalwell is. Now, speaking of Eric Swalwell, he has also come forward to comment on his look at this dork, comment on his relationship with this Chinese beauty over here, Christine Fang. Of course, Eric Swalwell is going to position this as some type of a political hit job. I mean, let's be honest, if anybody knows about political hit jobs, it's Eric Swalwell.
Trisha Heaton looks...
Just got to get past this commercial. Oh my gosh, they're not letting me skip this commercial. That's so annoying. Yeah, they are not allowing me to skip this commercial. I cannot believe they're doing this to me. No, she is not dead. There are more than one Fang Fang. Okay, the Fang Fang who died was a much older woman. I've seen her picture. I actually publicly on this show did I disproved that on here. So trust me, it's a different woman named Fang Fang. Yeah, I looked into it specifically for the whole story. It's a different woman. Trust me, it's a different woman. I can't use an ad blocker because I'm also playing media that is embedded in these web pages. It will not just block the ads, it will also block the media. And then I have to manually go in and turn the ad blocker off and then turn it back on. Believe me, I've tried to find ways around this. Before, it wasn't such a big deal because they didn't make you watch the whole ad. But now, apparently, they are making me watch the entire ad. You got it, AOB. I should find the original debunking of that I did and make a short of it so then people can just share it around. All right. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie and the can I appreciate you. Okay. Let me pause it. Let me turn the audio back on. Unmute. There we go. All right, Eric, tell me how you are such a victim.
The Washington Post reporting, as I believe you know, that he has now restarted an investigation of you, which the FBI previously conducted and found no accusation or evidence of.
Well, let's be clear. It's not that the FBI didn't find an accusation. There was definitely an accusation. He slept with a Chinese spy. That happened. There was no criminal charges that were brought, but I think everybody here knows that just because charges are not brought does not mean there is not room for charges to be brought. The FBI and the CIA that were running this investigation, attempting to turn Fang Fang into some type of an American asset, they were not looking to actually indict Eric Swalwell. They were looking to control Eric Swalwell. And they didn't have to bring any information forward. They didn't have to actually indict the man. All they had to do was go to him and say, hey, look, we know this about you. We could tell everybody about it, and then your career would be over. What do you say? You just do what we want you to do. That's just so much more believable when you look at the shady underbelly of the deep state swamp.
Wrongdoing, do you suspect, because this wouldn't be the first time, that this is politically motivated?
I suspect it's politically motivated, Jim. I have the only lawsuit that has survived this presidency. It's me and the January 6 officers. I was an impeachment manager. I worked with Adam Schiff on the Russia investigation, and I'm a candidate for governor in California to start voting in about 35 days. So these are...
Right now, he's polling at about 5%, just so everybody's clear.
Dangerous individuals who've gone after over 500 political opponents and organizations, Donald Trump and the FBI. And we know that they want a Western White House. There's a threat right now that 2 Republicans will get through in the top 2 primary in California. This is an effort to knock out the person who's been in the lead. And Kash Patel, by the way, in his own book called Government Gangsters, has a list of government gangsters. I'm not on the list. I'm above the list. Adam Schiff and I are in the prelude to that list. But Californians know better. They are going to pick the next governor, not Donald Trump.
Well, Californians may pick the next governor if the elections in California are not totally broken by the time that happens. But it's not going to be Eric Swalwell because, again, he's only polling at about 5%. So Eric Swalwell put out a message over the weekend, just kind of refuting this additionally through great reporting. We now know the outrageous ends the White House will go to target political opponents. This is in response to a Washington Post story, which seemingly indicated that President Trump had directed his FBI to destroy the political career of Eric Swalwell. Now, we don't need Donald Trump to do that. We don't need Kash Patel to do that. Eric Swalwell's career is only as big as it is right now. So not too worried about that. Now, I would also like to show you guys an interesting statistic that I saw over the weekend. President Trump's second administration has pushed to reopen more immigration cases than all previous admins combined, over 115,000. He has additionally revoked over 100,000 visas and set over 1.5 million legal statuses for termination. This is quite literally the most aggressive attempt at the reversal of the modern immigration statistic that we have seen in history. This has never happened before, and I want everybody to recognize this because it truly is a sea change. It is a very different world, and I know many people would like to see more, but the fact of the matter is that we only have resources that can handle so much, and even to that end, President Trump has blown away every other administration that ever ran the United States of America. I mean, you look at this, the only person who was a close second to Donald Trump is himself, and he did that in his first term. Ironically, Barack Obama was not that far behind, but Joe Biden was far below anything that either Trump's first term or Obama's first term or even George W. Bush attempted. And of course, this was during the era of September 11th, when everybody was worried about everything. Here we are, and President Trump is pushing more people out the door than we've ever seen in our nation's history. Now, we're also going to have to check in and do a vibe check with Tim Walz, because J.D. Vance, during that interview with Benny Johnson, also mentioned him. And he said that not only is Tim Walz in danger of being investigated by his brand new task force as the fraud czar, but also, of course, California. Now, as we spoke about last week, the brand new fraud task force that was put together by President Trump and being run by J.D. Vance, currently now set to look into a number of things, including Ilhan Omar, who definitely committed immigration fraud. Also, election fraud. That is definitely on the plate, not just financial fraud. And J.D. Vance was asked about Tim Walz and his criminal activity. Let's take a listen.
The real reason you're stiff after sitting.
Okay. And of course, oh my God, they're going to do it to me again. I can't believe this. You know what? I'm just going to read the actual quote here. All right. So Benny Johnson asks about Tim Walz. He was like, what about your friend Tim Walz? I mean, you guys shared a wonderful moment together on the debate stage. And J.D. Vance said, I do feel very bad for Tim Walz because of what happened in the October 2024 debate. But unfortunately, we're going to have to maybe kick him again a little bit because, look, I don't know. To be clear, I don't know what Tim Walz knew about the fraud, about what was happening in Minneapolis, but what I do know is that the Department of Justice is now going to look into it. Now we're going to investigate it. And if he committed a crime, we are absolutely going to prosecute it. Now, I personally believe that Tim Walz committed a crime. At a very minimum, Tim Walz was aware of whistleblower communications. He and others in his administration sought to punish those whistleblowers for coming forward. Also, of course, the fraud in California is something that many people are very laser focused on. He said the right amount of voter fraud is zero. Fraud happens in both our voting system and our welfare system. We have way more often than they let on, which means that we clearly have a problem that will be looked at by this new voter fraud, by this whole of effort fraud task force. He said in California, they actually prosecute you if you ask for a voter ID. There's only one reason to do that, and that is if you want to commit fraud. Now, he mentions that there is only a small amount of fraud. They always point to that. In the same way that just because you didn't get indicted doesn't mean you shouldn't be indicted. Just because we haven't found fraud to prosecute yet doesn't mean the fraud isn't actually happening. There actually is a ton of fraud. And as we can see here in the situation with the autism clinics in Minnesota, the fraud was happening for a long time. And there were many who tried to blow the whistle on this, including the person here who is being interviewed on Fox. She actually attempted to report on a number of fraudulent autism care clinics, and she was attacked. She was called racist because these autism clinics were Somali in nature. And now she is one of those clinics who should be open, but is unable to be open because their federal funding was cut off. I kind of wish that the administration would address specific use cases like this, but take a listen.
We went and looked at a few of their clinics. My staff did, not me personally, and we decided we didn't want to affiliate with them, and I got written up in a blog as being racist.
Really?
So anytime you go out and yes, and that was years ago. That was a few years ago. Anytime it's a fear of.
Her name is Jennifer Larson of the Holland Center.
Every Minnesotan, we are good, honest, hardworking people, and we don't want to be called racist because we're not. If you go up against the Somalis, you're immediately.
I'll tell you what, as soon as you stop worrying about being called racist, it's like the shackles are off. You never have to worry about it ever again. Let them call you racist because there are worse things that can happen to you. Let them call you anti-Semitic because there are worse things that can happen to you. If you care about your country, if you care about putting guilty people in prison, then shout it from the rooftops, regardless of what these morons are going to call you.
Racist.
So therefore, you have to tolerate fraud, which seems to be, at least at a minimum, the motivation for many people involved. And now you have your funds frozen. Who do you blame?
Blame the administration and Governor Walz. They turned a blind eye. There is no possible way this could have happened unless they let it happen. All of us who've been in business get spot audits on site every year where they come in, the state does, and says, I want to see these files for these children for this time. Every year. And you have to pass these audits. There's crossing the T's, dotting the I's, the scrutiny that we're under to be perfect. And somehow they didn't know that these clinics didn't have working phone numbers or kids. Clearly, they weren't getting audits on site. I don't think you need AI or Nick Shirley to go around and figure it out. If they would have just stopped by the way they do my clinics, they would have seen it.
Your clinic is under threat right now with the freezing of funds that are necessary for your clinic. And you blame the administration. You blame Governor Walz. Is simply not seeking re-election enough? What kind of accountability do you want to see for the political figures of Minnesota?
I think all of Minnesota is so tired of people not being held accountable. Stepping down is just, it's his way out. This is so ugly and so widespread, and he was so complicit, in my opinion, of course. I'm more worried about the 30 to 40,000 children if they don't pull this back, this prepayment review, and pay us, that are going to be left, innocent children that are going to be left with no services. The schools can't take them. The schools were the people who said, we can't take you, and discharged them. They'll have nowhere to go. Moms and dads, somebody's going to have to stop working and stay home with these children. Whatever happens to Governor Walz, just leave. And if that's what it takes, just leave. But I am the most worried about these families who are going to pay for the fraud that was allowed to happen. That
right there should be a criminal action in and of itself. These kids don't deserve this. The good doctors and the good people running these clinics don't deserve this. I have a lot of faith in this fraud task force that they're going to identify the true culprits of this illegal activity. This is way too much money to simply let it go. And it's also far too high priority an item for them to let go either. Now here, J.D. Vance also speaks with Nick Shirley about whether or not prosecutions are actually going to happen. If they don't happen, then they run the risk of losing the confidence of everyone. And there are many different things that they could lose confidence on. I just simply do not believe that they are willing to let this one go.
Relief.
Let me go ahead and let me try to refresh the screen and see if that does it to give me a skippable ad.
There's one simple sugar hack anyone can use to reset their...
It just gave me a different non-skippable ad. Oh, good God. Okay. God, this is going to be a long one, too. Jeez, oh, Pete's. Well, while I'm waiting for that to finish, let me tell you a little bit more about a different way to go after fraud. So yesterday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced the launch of a brand new anti-fraud program, which you can participate in. And if your tips result in fraudulent ne'er-do-wells being caught, you, my friend, can qualify for up to 30% of the fines that are levied against these criminals for stealing your taxpayer dollars. Take a listen, and I want you to take notes.
I don't know, Joe, but it's very exciting. I think it's going to be a great way to ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse, starting in Minneapolis, which has been ground zero. So we are encouraging whistleblowers who know about fraud, people who are stealing from the American taxpayer, to come forward. At Treasury, we're setting up a website, and we will be giving rewards up to 10 to 30% of the fines that we levy. I don't know.
10 to 30% of the fines that are levied. Now, grumpy old man, the story is on Gateway Pundit, and the video itself is embedded from Rumble. I can't do anything about it, bro. And I'm sorry that it's annoying for you. Just imagine being me trying to do this show. All right. Now, that website did launch today. Again, I want you to take notes. FinCEN.gov/whistleblower. So if you believe you have some knowledge about a fraudster that is defrauding the government of the United States and by proxy, the people of the United States, you can go to FinCEN.gov/whistleblower and you can deliver your tips. You can blow the whistle on fraud, money laundering, on sanctions violations. There are so many different ways. Now that the non-skippable ad is done, let's go ahead and hear from J.D. Vance, because he says, yes, we are going to prosecute imminently.
Now that we have the fraud task force here inside the United States, what will you guys be doing different than something that we haven't done before to tackle fraud here?
Well, two really big things, Nick. So the first of all is we're going to be coordinating across the government in a way that's really never been done before to focus on anti-fraud. So let's say, for example, that Zak Paine or somebody at the Secretary of Treasury's office sees a fraudulent payment made, but it's not, it's not at the Treasury Department, it's at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid. There's
Okay, best of all says Jew hatred is real and prevalent. Worldwide fake racism is not. There's also fake people who claim that you are anti-Semitic if you criticize the actions of the government of Israel. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that real anti-Semitism doesn't exist or that real racism doesn't exist. I'm saying that people who cloak themselves in the specter of a protected class so that they can remain free from scorn, free from criticism, free from any type of commentary. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so stop. Just stop. Okay? Have you ever seen my show before? Do you know what I talk about? Because it really ought to be obvious at this point.
Going to be coordination now so that when one person in the government sees fraud happening, they're actually telling everybody else so that we can get to the root of it and hopefully prosecute it. And that leads me to my second point, and maybe the most important is we've never before within the Department of Justice had a committed anti-fraud task force, a committed assistant attorney general who's focused on the fraud issue. What our new AAG focus on fraud has told me that right now we don't even prosecute fraud that's under $1.5 million, which means there's a lot of fraudsters who never get caught, who never get punished. We're changing that too.
So there's people who are making $1.5 million committing fraud, and they used to not be prosecuted. When can we expect to see prosecutions take place, for instance, for example, like the Lears at the Leering Center?
So we just got AAG, our new AAG, confirmed. He hasn't even been sworn in yet. I'll swear him in next week, actually. And look, I think the plan is we got to start doing prosecutions as quickly as possible. These cases take a little while to build. You've got to investigate. You've got to gather evidence. But now that we have that guy set up, now that we have Colin McDonald set up, I think in a matter of months, we should be seeing a significant ramp up in the number of prosecutions that we're seeing.
Awesome.
All right, matter of months, I'm going to go ahead and hold him to it. All right. And now that we've got our way through there, we've heard from Scott Paine on the anti-fraud effort, FinCEN.gov/whistleblower. Let's also now hear the results of the release of this website, because as soon as they published it, it became inundated with leads.
They come to the Treasury. They come to the Treasury website. We've gotten over 700 leads. Right. Many of them are now active. And so just go treasury.gov, and it's right there prominently on the website. And we can pay up to a 30% reward for the recovered funds.
Nice. Lastly, it's people.
They come to the.
So over 700 leads one day. Let's go ahead and see it. And hopefully the leads will continue to flow in. I have no doubt that they absolutely will. All right. Now, Speaking of Ilhan Omar and frauds, the nation of Somaliland, or an account on X alleging to represent the nation of Somaliland, spoke out after J.D. Vance's interview last week. Now, this is not an official Somaliland Twitter account. However, it is handled by people who are in Somaliland. Now, in case you're confused, Somaliland is a breakaway republic from the old traditional nation of Somalia. This nation is not even recognized by most other nations on planet Earth. So they would like to get their hands on Ilhan Omar because it was, of course, her family that were part of the ruling junta, the authoritarian government that engaged in horrific war crimes in the nation of Somalia. This was ultimately the reason why Ilhan Omar and her family fled Somalia and claimed refugee status, because they claimed to be running from that government. Actually, they were part of that government. And this is why they changed their names, and Ilhan Omar lied about her age so that she could get citizenship under the acceptance of her father. So on X, they respond to Benny Johnson mentioning that today, for the first time, we got 100% on the record confirmation that Ilhan Omar committed immigration fraud. Lying on your immigration forms is an immediate denaturalization. Vice President J.D. Vance says DHS is exploring enforcement. Ilhan needs to be deported. They say deportation? Please, you're just sending the princess back to her kingdom. Extradition, say the word. Now, I'm not exactly certain which part of Somalia or Somaliland Ilhan Omar would be deported to, but that appears to be the goal right now. Actual indictment proving the fact that she was engaged in fraud, and then, of course, the denaturalization and deportation. Sassy Gal says, I just talked to Khan and gave him all the details in Palm Beach. I saw your email, but I didn't see anything specific come through. I was just going to go over your phantom voter report from 2024. If you want to send me information, I'm going to be talking about that here in just a few minutes. All right. Best of all, I don't need to talk or make excuses or respond to the comments of anybody else. I am not responsible for anybody else's statements. I am only responsible for my statements. And if you take a look at the history and body of my work and you don't know where I stand on these things, then I don't know what to tell you. Stop saying that I should be aware of what other people are saying. I don't care what other people are saying because it's not me. All I care about is what I say. And I'm here giving you my opinion on these things. And the truth of the matter is that people use the specter of anti-Semitism in the same way they use the specter of racism or the specter of transphobia or the specter of Islamophobia. I don't care that anybody has gone through some shit in history because everybody has gone through some shit in history. So don't tell me that I should be making allowances for what other people are saying. I have been here saying the same thing consistently for the entirety of my career. I'm sorry that you think that I should give some special accommodation to anybody else on planet Earth. I don't believe that I should. Here we are. I'm an American. I care about America. I care about putting America first. I care about putting the American people first. And you are not going to get me to stop talking about something. Now, maybe you missed the story that I did last week where Josh Hammer said that Tulsi Gabbard, on good authority, Tulsi Gabbard is anti-Semitic. I have never seen anything to indicate that Tulsi Gabbard was anti-Semitic. But what I did see was that Tulsi Gabbard was bringing information forward about Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard was bringing information forward about Adam Schiff. How many times have we seen people claim that some criticism of someone could be racked up to their hidden racism or anti-Semitism or transphobia or homophobia? It's all in the same category. When people take a protected class and they shroud themselves with it and they say, you can't do anything to criticize me because of this. No, I call out fraud. I call out criminality. anywhere that it is. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care who you sleep with at night. I don't care what the color of your skin is. That has nothing to do with it. So again, I don't care what other people say. This is my show. That's the only one that I care about. And there's really no other thing that I can say to you if that's how you feel. So, here it is. I've been here for almost 10 years saying the same shit. All right. So I'm looking forward to seeing Ilhan Omar deported back to Africa no matter what country she goes to. All right. Now, here, once again, we have yet another instance of apparent Democrat attempt to subvert and pervert elections. Election fraud, voter fraud, whatever it might be, we are going to find out. And since Sassy Gal said that she had some additional information, I'm going to refresh my inbox and see if you sent it to me. And I don't have anything from you yet, Sassy Gal. So I'm just going to go over the phantom voter report from 2024. Now, in Palm Beach, this just happens to be the area that encompasses Mar-a-Lago. And this is the area that just recently flipped from Republican to Democrat. It was a special election. There is generally lower turnout in special elections, but this Democrat won the special election by about 800 votes. The man in question, John Panicci, was arrested last Friday for taking sensitive computer equipment and other supplies on March 19th before the actual special election, which was held on March 24th. Now, a Democrat flipping a Florida State House district that includes President Trump's Mar-a-Lago immediately sounds suspect. But I will give it the fact that it was a special election. There's always lower turnout on special elections. And the truth of the matter is that Republicans turn out less than Democrats on special elections. Emily Gregory is the Democrat who officially won that election as of this moment. It's State House District 87. And President Trump actually won this district by 11 points in 2024. President Trump also endorsed the Republican candidate, a man by the name of John Maples. However, I don't necessarily believe the results of this election, even before we learn about John Panicci having stolen sensitive election equipment and infrastructure. Now, what we have here from my good friend over at Unite for Freedom, and actually, hold on, I need to open this in a different way. Janine sending me the arrest document. Okay, so I'm going to have to open this in a different window. Okay, so, all right. So she says that if you read this, it's clear he was in training as an inspector. That's a paid position. He's not a volunteer. They are downplaying his role to take an onus off of the SOE. Is that the Secretary of Elections? SOE? I don't know what SOE stands for. I'm part of the Republican Party in Palm Beach. One of our members investigated Panicci. He's got a bunch of traffic tickets and arrested for driving with a suspended. He has a bunch of credit card companies suing him. He's also always voted Democrat. That is not necessarily something that gets talked about often when they are discussing this man's history. Let me open this with Safari. Okay, so Panicci's arrest document. Let me make this big. Now, normally I wouldn't want to dox somebody, but this is a publicly available information. So he was charged with a felony misdemeanor. He lives in West Palm Beach. John Dominic Panicci, 180 pounds, 5'11", born 1/24/1967. Let's see. Oh, the location of the offense was in Palm Beach. He's actually a resident of Lake Worth, Florida. Oh, and he's actually born in Michigan. Maybe that's why he's so familiar with election theft. Okay, so looking for the, okay. On March 27th, Detective Pkwy, assigned to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, District 3 Detective Bureau, was contacted by Detective Sergeant Newcomb, who requested that I respond to the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections, that's it, Supervisor of Elections, office located at 4301 Cherry Road in unincorporated West Palm Beach to conduct further investigation into a delayed theft. Upon arrival, contact was made with the facility's security manager, Christopher Allen. Allen advised that on March 19th, the facility hosted training for paid employees and volunteers who registered to assist with the election, which was set to be held on March 24th. Upon concluding training on March 19th, it was identified that a component utilized in conjunction with one of their voter registration kiosks was missing. Allen was later apprised of this, and upon further investigation, he was able to determine that a subject who he identified as John Pkwy had stolen the component during his time participating in the training. A sworn interview was conducted with Allen, which was captured utilizing my body-worn camera. During this interview, Allen described that he was apprised of the missing component on March 23rd, which prompted him to investigate further. Upon doing so, Allen utilized records from the facility's check-in kiosk as well as on-site surveillance cameras, which led him to discover that Pkwy had taken the component in question. We discussed the component, in which Allen referred to as an activator. This item was explained as being an encrypted key that was plugged into the voter registration device and allows the network to access databases that contain voter registration information. Being that this was a training day for individuals who were intended to assist with confirming voter registrations on the day of the election, this particular activator that was taken was only formatted and encrypted to access a training database. Even though this particular activator was only encrypted to access the training databases, representatives of the Supervisor of Elections were concerned that if the device was to be reverse engineered or tampered with, it could be utilized with malicious intent. The activator in question was described as a standard SanDisk brand USB drive that was black and silver in color with a label on it that indicated it was for training. When questioned as to how Allen identified Pkwy, he advised that each participant was required to check in via an electronic kiosk near the entrance of the facility. Upon doing so, personnel were to provide a valid Florida ID as well as to allow the kiosk to capture an image of their face. Allen advised that the kiosk purges the images of both the identification provided and the facial view. However, their names, addresses, date of birth, and timestamps for the individual's arrival and leaving are recorded. Based upon the timestamp provided by the check-in kiosk as compared to the surveillance footage, Allen was able to track that the subject checked in, compared it with the information that was put into the check-in system, further corroborated by the fact that Pkwy was the only individual that day that was not already on the roster, which required him to write in his name. So he showed up late and then also happened to steal stuff on that same day. I don't think that he came back either. He checked in at 8:34. Checked out at 11:37, so he's there about 3 hours. From the view of the surveillance camera affixed within the training room, Allen was able to identify that Pkwy's training had surreptitiously removed the activator from the kiosk next to his. Upon doing so, he appeared to conceal it in his pants pocket, so this was very intentional. I questioned Allen about the training where he clearly articulated that none of the kiosk's training materials or electronics should have been tampered with, and nothing should have been removed from the training environment by those participating in the training. Allen advised that there is a specific reset procedure that is handled only by staff conducting the training. This clearly nullified any potential notion that Pkwy had inadvertently taken the item. Allen explained that upon discovering Pkwy's misconduct, the poll worker manager, Theron Todd, made contact with Pkwy via telephone, where he was allegedly confronted about the theft. Allen was provided this information secondhand. However, he was advised that Pkwy initially denied the claims, but then later claimed he did not mean to take it and that he had already discarded it. All lies. Todd was not present at the time of this interview. However, Allen explained that the intent with contacting Pkwy was to inform him that based upon their findings, he was not going to be allowed to assist with the official election that was taking place on March 24th. Allen advised that due to the activator that was taken being only encrypted to access the training databases in their terminals, they were able to complete the election on March 24th without having to change any security protocols. This, however, does not diminish the fact that by taking the activator, it rendered that kiosk inoperable until they were able to replace it accordingly. This also does not alleviate the significant security risk associated with an individual who possibly has malicious intent possessing this item. Now, during my interactions with Allen, contact was able to be made with a representative of the supervisor of elections information technology department via telephone, where they were able to briefly provide a more in-depth understanding of the activator and the manner that in which it was to be used. During this interaction, many of the facts outlined above were reiterated. It was expressed that at face value, this activator does not have significant monetary value, being that it is just a generic USB drive that is loaded with pre-designated software created by VR Systems brand software, which is intended to grant access to certain features and databases via the voter registration kiosks. Even though it was apparent that the financial loss was minor, it was explained that if the activator was to be manipulated or re-engineered and was then reintroduced into their system, it could cause significant issues. I was able to review portions of the surveillance footage, which captured Paine checking in, as well as taking the activator, and based upon the footage provided, it was clear that upon checking in at the automated kiosk, Paine provided an ID card which appeared to place back in his pants pocket upon completion. Upon reviewing footage of the actual theft, Paine can be seen sitting at the end of several small tables with what appears to have the voter registration kiosks lined out in stations. Paine appears to be conducting training and manipulating paperwork, and eventually he reaches over to the kiosk sitting to the right of his, where he appears to intentionally pull the activator from the kiosk and place it in his right pocket. Paine can then be seen going up to the front of the room, where he confers with the Secretary of Election employees for several minutes before eventually leaving the room. It is clear in the footage that Paine intentionally takes the activator from the kiosk next to his. However, he does not do the same to the kiosk that he is utilizing, further attempting to obscure his actions. This clearly indicates that he took the device intentionally and clearly attempted to do so surreptitiously. As a result of the facts gathered with this investigation, it's clear Paine willfully and intentionally stole a major component of sensitive computer equipment that was intended to be used to protect and gain access to sensitive computer systems and computer networks. Based upon this, I find that probable cause exists to charge Paine with one count of FSS 815.062C, offenses against users of computers, computer systems, computer networks, and electronic devices, as well as one count of FSS 812.013 petty theft. I wonder why they don't charge him with some election-related crime, because, I mean, this is the theft of election material. Now, hold on, I need to make my screen a little bit smaller. Wow, why is the picture so big? That is wild. Anyways, this is him actually stealing that activator from the from the kiosk next to him. Now, the major concern here is that if this could be re-engineered, back-engineered, or somehow had some malicious programming uploaded onto it, then it could be used for malicious purposes. Now, it turns out that Mr. Paine is someone with the capability to do this. I saw rundown of his LinkedIn and some of his social media activity, and he identified himself as a sort of computer nerd, somebody who could potentially have done exactly what they were afraid he might have. Considering that he showed up later than everyone else, that he also left and did not come back, and had the clear intention to steal this USB key and to do so without alerting any attention to the fact that it may have been him, I tend to believe that that was exactly what he was doing. Now, this story seemed very familiar to me, and I would like to show you guys this story right here, which we talked about back in June of 2024. In Maricopa County, there was another temporary worker who was also arrested for stealing a security fob and keys from the Maricopa County Tabulation Center. Now, his name was Walter Ringfield. He went to the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center and stole a security fob and keys. So he was attempting to gain physical access. But it is the very similar type of situation. Someone, a Democrat, taking on a temporary position within the elections in a highly contested district and seeking to gain access to equipment or software or activities that could otherwise give him a nefarious bit of access to something that he should have no business being around. So Walter stated his reason for taking the fob was he wanted to clean up. I don't believe that for a second. So let's just watch this report that came out at the time, and then we're going to move on to another similar situation.
Hey, good morning, Arizona. Colton here. Just into our newsroom this morning, we're getting a look at the mugshot of a suspect allegedly involved in a theft at the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center. I'm going to bring up that mugshot for you full here. This is Walter Ringfield. Officials say that he was a temporary election worker, and on Friday morning, after an inventory count, county election workers say an item was taken from the tab center the night before. Election staff immediately notified the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Now, that stolen item has since been recovered, but now workers are trying to reprogram and just going over the equipment to make sure everything is square. And of course, this comes on the day between debates for the Maricopa County Recorder. So let's send things into Scott and Simone with more.
Okay, so, and then again in 2022, there were strange discrepancies that took place in Maricopa County's election system. Now, just because they caught Panici and just because they caught Mr. Walter here does not mean they were the only people attempting to gain some level of nefarious access to these election-related systems. Perhaps there were others who did this and were a little bit better at their surreptitious attempts to cover up their activities. If we go back even farther, this time to Pennsylvania and 2020, we find that there were alarms that were raised at that time as well. CodeMonkey Z had gotten a hold of the Dominion voting system's user manual for the machines that were being used in Pennsylvania, and he said that anyone who services these machines, the local IT guy, he would basically be the ultimate gatekeeper. And in this instance, in a lawsuit that was filed at that time, in Delaware County, there was an observer in the county office where mail-in ballots were counted. There was a delivery witnessed on November 5th of V-cards or USB drives in a plastic bag with no seal and no accompanying paper ballots. The V-cards or USB drives were then taken back to a counting room where observer access was limited. There was no opportunity to observe what happened to these V-cards or the USB drives in the counting room. Now, clearly, USB drives, the ability to swap things back and forth is without any sort of chain of custody, gives us little confidence in our election system, whether it's for the voter identification lists or for the actual ballots themselves. But we continue to see a number of insecurities related to these things throughout the years, and they're only connected to electronic voting systems. Now, what's even more concerning, we'll take a look at my friends from Unite for Freedom's Phantom Voter Report from 2024. Remember, it was 800 votes in Palm Beach County that led to the Democrat taking this win. If we look at the election in 2024, they found that 12.1% of voters were inadmissible. So there was a total of 753,351 certified votes. Obviously, a major federal election like this is going to have a much larger turnout. What's concerning is that of those 753,000, 8,664 were for voters who did not exist. And there were also 40,832 voters that were not in compliance. Even more concerning, there were 37,192 voters whose Social Security numbers did not exist or were duplicated. And there were 4,531 votes that were missing a voter. So my confidence in Palm Beach County's elections begins and ends with this report. I was already aware of the fact that they have major problems down there. And then you also now have nefarious individuals with complicated computer backgrounds who are stealing election-related equipment. I believe this man would have had the ability, if he would have been allowed, he would have been able to reverse engineer, or perhaps he already had the ability to reverse engineer that USB drive, or perhaps somebody with greater technical knowledge hired him to go in there and steal that USB drive, and he was planning to hand it off to somebody else, and then they would have brought it back, and they would have had the ability to steal this election to an even greater degree. All right, before we continue, I have a very quick message from our friends over here on Rumble. Let me say thank you very much to Rumble. Now, here, you guys, is just a little scoop that many people using Rumble are talking about behind the scenes. It's actually one of the reasons I'm using Rumble right now, why I like Rumble. They've made a way for you to super chat creators so that we not only get paid immediately, but we also don't have any fees that are taking out. On places like YouTube and Twitch, they take up to like 50% of the fees from the tips that people deliver, which is normal for those platforms. But of course, I'm not monetized on YouTube, and I am still kicked off of Twitch. So I really, really appreciate Rumble for doing this. So this platform takes 0 fees. I pretty much keep 100% of what you guys send. You can super chat with Bitcoin, Tether, USD, or Tether Gold stable coins. And that tip is also going to show up directly on the Rumble chat, and I'm going to do my best to read it. Of course, I always read the super chats. We've only got one today from Sassy Gal, but thank you very much, Sassy Gal. I appreciate you. All you need to do to be able to use this is to go through that QR code on screen, go to wallet.rumble.com, or download the Rumble Wallet app on your app store, whether it's Android or Apple, and then you can send tips directly to your favorite creators. You log in with Rumble, and it shows you everybody you're subscribed to. I believe it actually tells you who's live at that moment as well. It's an amazing way to get rid of the middleman and stop supporting platforms that do not support you, and of course, to support the creator economy. So a big shout out to Rumble for making this disruptive technology. I appreciate you. Yeah, I'm not monetized on YouTube because I'm anti-Semitic. That's funny. Not monetized on YouTube because I talked about true things and I refused to temper my language. I can't believe somebody went after me for saying that I had a problem with that. It's garbage. It's just garbage. Nobody has the right to tell me what to say or to tell me that I need to admit anything or apologize for what other people are saying. That is so anti-American as far as I'm concerned. I'll tell you what. Do people think that it's anti-Semitic of me that I think it was a total betrayal of the United States of America that Brian Mast wore his IDF uniform to Congress? Because I think it was, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he's Jewish, although, of course, it was an Israeli Defense Forces uniform. The problem is that I don't care that it's IDF. I care that it's a foreign nation's military uniform. Any foreign nation's military uniform worn by a member of the United States House of Representatives to a session of the United States House of Representatives, I see that as a tremendous betrayal. I don't care if it's Israel. I don't care if it's Ireland. I don't care if it's the UK. I don't care if it's Canada or Ukraine. It is disrespectful and it's completely inappropriate. Jim Kyle says, Lois Frankel, House of Representative for Palm Beach County. She's corrupt as hell, been there over 30 years. She was the mayor back in the day. I believe it. Yeah, no apologies. I am never going to apologize. Never going to apologize because I say exactly what I think. And if you have been here all these years and you haven't listened to what I have to say, then I don't know what to tell you. All right. Now, there is, of course, a brand new possibility that we have on our date card here. Obviously, the Senate has not come back to vote on the House's continuing resolution. So technically, DHS and the entirety of its agencies are still unfunded. And the people of the Senate, including Lindsey Graham is flying solo at Disney World. He's walking around with a bubble wand. It's completely weird. I guess expected for Lindsey Graham. He's got a little sugar in his step, if you know what I mean. But it's weird. It's weird. Lindsey Graham is a grown-ass man, and he's hanging out at Disney World on his own. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. But John Thune, he's on vacation. All these people are on vacation. And meanwhile, they only work 110 days a year. Did you guys know that? $170,000 a year for 110 days worth of work. I wish I could get a freaking vacation, but I can't. I can't because of people like them. The Steel Monkey says, yes, Zach, F that guy. If he wants to be a Jew, he needs to go to Jewland. Oh, that's funny. And of course, that one's going to get me in trouble too. Wah, 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 wah. Hold on. Here we go. I don't give the rants, guys. I just read them. All right. So Mike Lee says right here that President Trump has the power to convene the Senate under Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution on extraordinary occasions. If a department with 260,000 employees going unfunded isn't an extraordinary occasion, especially while the Senate is out on a 2-week recess during that shutdown with no plans to resolve the impasse beyond, we'll deal with that in 2 weeks, I don't know what is. So yes, this is an extraordinary occasion. President Trump could reconvene the Senate. He could force the Senate to come in. Now, Mike Lee also posted something very interesting about the passage of that 3 a.m. funding bill for DHS without the SAVE Act attached and without funding for TSA or Border Patrol, or excuse me, for ICE or Border Patrol. And a lot of people had this question. So he says, I would imagine, I have no reason not to believe Mike Lee on this. I feel like he's a fairly straight shooter. Fairly, of course, he's in the Senate. I don't much trust anybody in elected government, to be really honest with you, regardless of the God they worship. And I would think that this is probably what everybody else in the Senate, minus the 5 people who showed up, John Thune and the 4 others. He says, I got a call shortly before 2 a.m., and I was told that they had a deal materialized that would ensure everyone at DHS would get paid. So they lied to him. A possibly fleeting deal that required immediate action. And under the circumstances, I had every reason to believe that President Trump and House Republicans were on board. Based on that understanding, I declined to call in an objection. Had I been told that neither President Trump nor the House GOP had assented, I would have objected immediately. So there you have it right there. This is, in my view, what's wrong? In my view, this is all on Thune. Okay, I respect President Trump. He keeps talking about Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. Sure, they have a hand to play in this, but this is about John Thune. John Thune showed us that 60 votes means absolutely nothing. If they can show up at 3 a.m. with 5 people and no dissenting voices, and they can pass a bad funding package, which ignores funding for ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, they could also have attached the Save America Act, and they could have forced that through. In fact, they could have forced through a bill that funded the entirety of DHS, which is exactly what they told based Mike Lee. But they lied to him. I have to believe that they lied to every other member of the Senate that they called and said, we have a funding package and we need to pass it right away. Trust us, bro. We're going to get this done and everything's going to be cool so that we can go on vacation. I've got an appointment at Lake Havasu. And Lindsey and his ladybugs had an appointment at Walt Disney World. 417 Patriot says, $1,550 a day is roughly what those worthless bastards make, plus all the free shit. So excited to see you in a week and a half at GART. Is your better half, the beautiful Mrs. Lisa, going to be coming also? Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you and your hubby as well. She will not be there. She's going to be home with the dogs, and she's actually got to go back to Ohio right before I go to GART. So we're going to be like missing each other like a week before and then the week after. It's kind of a bummer. Thank you again, Steel Monkey. Also, thank you again, Jim Kyle, and thank you again to Sassy Gal. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys as well. Anybody else here going to be at GART in Nashville? If you're going to be in Nashville, but maybe you're not going to be at GART, you might be able to still just get like a day ticket, and we can hang out and, say what's up, shoot the shit. All right, now, I share this in connection with the fraud. I actually meant to show it. Well, I mean, the Save America Act is about beating the fraud in a manner of speaking. So it's all relevant. But Ed Martin earlier this morning shared this picture of him and Seth Keshel. Everybody knows here that Seth Keshel is the godfather of election security, all right? He's been out there, very intelligent guy, had him on the show a number of times, love the conversations with Seth, love picking his brain. He recently had a book that came out, and he's meeting with Ed Martin. Now, Seth says when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary to destroy the scourge of election fraud. Now, Ed Martin is no longer part of the weaponization working group. They spun that down for whatever reason. But he is in charge of a number of other things there at the Department of Justice. Now, all I can say is that Ed Martin is fairly selective about the pictures that he posts with people. And when he posts them, they're relevant and highly so. The fact that Seth Keshel is at the Department of Justice clearly leads me to believe that it is in relation to something regarding election fraud. And Seth Keshel mentions election fraud himself. So all I can say is, this gets my jimmies rustling, and so I'm paying attention there. Now, also relevant because there was this week a investigation update on Fulton County and their evidentiary hearing to claw back the information the FBI took. So I believe this took place on Friday. So everybody watching here knows, or maybe you don't because you're a new viewer. But first of all, no ists, phobes, or isms here. I am just who I am. In January, the FBI executed that search warrant at Fulton County Elections Hub and Operations Center. They seized over 650 boxes of material, all of it from the 2020 election. Huge brouhaha because not only was the FBI there, but also Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was there. And that warrant was provided by a federal magistrate judge based primarily on evidence from 2 Georgia State Elections Board's complaints. We've talked about them on so many different occasions. The 3 petitioners trying to stop those investigations from taking place were Fulton County, the Fulton County Board of Registrations and Elections, and the Board of Commissioners. Now, in their official capacities, meaning as the government entities, they petitioned the court to claw back those documents from the FBI and the Department of Justice. They claim that they were seized unlawfully and that this seizure violated First and Fourth Amendment rights of the petitioners. The Bill of Rights, human rights, are afforded to people, not to government agencies. So initially, the probable cause affidavit was challenged under Rule 41G. That's a motion to return property obtained through an unlawful search and seizure. A federal judge ordered mediation between the 2 parties. That failed last week, and then an evidentiary hearing was ordered. So District Court Judge J.P. Boulay of the Northern District of Georgia heard from the 2 sides offered by the petitioners, Fulton County Clerk of Superior Court Che Alexander and the elections group Ryan Macias. Ryan Macias, whose cousin watches the show. In order for Fulton County to retain the records from... Oh, my God, I'm not on the freaking page. In order for... I didn't even show you the picture of Ed Martin, did I? History, reopen, last close tab. Here's Ed Martin and Seth Keshel. There we go. That's so funny. Okay. So anyways, getting back to the court, and here we go. We are looking at this article from the Gateway Pundit about Fulton County. So already went through the background. Let's talk about the evidentiary hearing. So in order for Fulton County to retain the records from the Justice Department, to claw them back, they would be required to meet a 4-part substantive test. That is according to Garland Favorito at Voter Georgia, another person that we follow quite often here. Now, also being a guest on the show. They would have to show, number one, did the government display a callous disregard for the plaintiff's constitutional rights? Those government agencies, guys, have no constitutional rights. They are the government. The Constitution was written to protect the people. It's a compact between the government and the people. The Constitution does not protect the rights of the government. The government is its own separate entity. They're the ones who are, elected to represent the people theoretically, and who have to abide by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Number two, did the plaintiff have an individual interest in and need for the material? Well, the answer is no. because the Fulton County Board of Elections has spoken openly before about how they wanted to destroy all of this election-related material. The only reason it's still on hand is because there have been a series of ongoing court cases. Will the plaintiff be irreparably injured by denial of the return of the property? The answer is no, because they've done nothing with this information for the last 6 years. They basically just sat on it and tried to find a reason to get rid of it so that they don't get caught rigging elections. And then number 4, does the plaintiff have an adequate remedy at law for the redress of their grievance? Well, there is no grievance because, again, these are government agencies. So Favorito and his wife Tamara, who are intimately involved with election security investigations. They've had a number of cases in the state of Georgia. We've covered them here every single time. They went to this evidentiary hearing, and Favorito said they spent all day on question number 1, callous disregard of the substantive test. He said there's no conceivable way that you could reach a conclusion that there was callous disregard for the plaintiff's right because the office of the clerk has no constitutional rights, number 1. And the DOJ adhered to the normal procedures in getting this search warrant. That's right. They had probable cause. They brought it to the judge. The judge said, looks like there's something here. I'm going to go ahead and sign it. So he says, continuing, we spent 5 hours asking the question whether or not the FBI displayed a callous disregard. They had the affidavit, which has 5 different areas, any one of which would have justified probable cause. So if 4 of them were wrong, they would still have the probable cause. Question number 2, did the plaintiff have an individual interest and need for the material? Well, this fails because in June of 2024, the clerk, Shay Alexander, had previously requested to the court in a case that was brought by Garland Favorito that the ballots be destroyed. That negates any possible interest they may have in the material. If it was up to them, it would have already been destroyed and the FBI wouldn't even have it. So a video was played during the hearing where this request was made before a Georgia court. So is the petition about retaining something with an individual interest and a need for the material? Or is it about destroying evidence that could support the claims made in the probable cause affidavit? I would say, obviously, the latter. Now, the petitioners also argued it was because they didn't have any room for the election material. However, Favorito pointed out that the request was made 3 weeks after they purchased a $30 million, 660,000 square foot warehouse just for the elections. Are you kidding me? You mean that you bought the warehouse and then 3 weeks later you already filled the whole thing up? Nobody believes that. Now, the argument regarding question 3, will the plaintiff be irreparably injured by denial of the return of the property? Of course not. Of course they're not going to be irreparably injured. They may be irreparably injured individually as a result of the probable cause affidavit being proven true once the investigation of the election-related material is completed. But they actually tried to say that they would be irreparably injured for a reason that was so unbelievable, because they said, well, now with all this exposure, there's all these open records requests, and we have to have the original records in order to fulfill all those open record requests. She said, Tamara said, I just wanted to stand up and scream, you've got to be kidding me. Now they want to fill open records requests. Let me tell you, as somebody who has been following along for the last 5 or 6 years, Fulton County, Georgia has done everything in their power to not fulfill open records requests. They are laughably bad. So if they're getting open records requests now, which they may, well, that's on them. They should have released this information long ago, but they kept fighting it in court. Now, Ryan Macias, who worked for that non-governmental organization, the Elections Group, at the time, also testified. Favorito said during that hearing, it came up that Macias was paid $400 an hour, plus that was for 50 hours of work, and he was involved in the elections process in Fulton County. By default, that makes him conflicted. That should have been enough to boot his testimony right off the bat, but unfortunately, he was allowed to testify. Now, back in January, it was reported that Joseph Rossi, who is party to an amicus brief that was submitted in this case, testified before the Georgia State Election Board last January that the elections group was party to an email in which Fulton County acknowledged it was aware of a discrepancy in the audit-turned hand count in November of 2020. We talked about that here. That discovery was eventually discovered by Rossi. It was confirmed by Governor Brian Kemp. It became the subject of the State Elections Board's complaint from 2021-181, and it was part of the probable cause affidavit that was used by the FBI to secure the election warrant. Now, Favorito joined the Why We Vote podcast with my friends on Badlands Media. They discussed this case, and it is definitely something you should watch. The good news is that the court has, in fact, sided with the DOJ over Fulton County. Here is Garland Favorito talking about that. Let's take a listen.
This case, as you know, started with Fulton County claiming that the FBI...
Oh, and look at that. CanCon is rating the stream right now. Thank you so much, CanCon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, violated their constitutional rights in seizing the ballots. On March 20th, the DOJ submitted a devastating brief that just destroyed all of the arguments. And even you don't even have to be an attorney to understand it. But the court, within 2 hours, issued this evidentiary hearing for Friday, in spite of the fact that the plaintiffs don't have standing and cannot meet the what we call the substantive criteria. So let me just start with the most fundamental thing that's most sensitive to me is the standing issue. There are 3 government agencies and 2 officials who are operating in their official capacity. And they are claiming constitutional rights violations, but none of these plaintiffs have constitutional rights. Government agencies, as you know, don't have constitutional rights, nor do people who are...
Thank you to everybody coming over from CanCon Stream. If you haven't, do me a favor, hit that like button. That would be really awesome.
Operating in their official capacities. So there really should not have been an evidentiary hearing to begin with. Then you top that off with the fact that even if they had standing, they cannot meet the 4-part substantive test.
What's hilarious to me is that, yeah, they were given this evidentiary hearing in the first place. The judge should have been able to catch all of these things prior. I mean, if we as citizens don't have standing to challenge our elections that we vote in, then why in the world would a government agency have standing to stop another government agency from investigating them for potentially holding fraudulent elections? So, good news. This is a major win for the American people, and it means that this investigation into Fulton County continues on into the future. Now, I have a couple of thank yous I need to give. Kara Maga, thank you so much. She says, great show. I appreciate you. Steel Monkey says, we will let it slip this time, but the next time we're going to have to do something about your producer. Yeah, that's me. I appreciate you, buddy. Sherman 2009 says, hey, Zach, I came into the show late because of work. I wanted to apologize for the absolutely embarrassing weekend in Canada with the NDP Socialist Party and the Juno Awards. I'm completely embarrassed. I wasn't even aware of them, so you are completely absolved of any embarrassment, my friend. And here's the other thing. And this is exactly the same as the discussion about racism and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Any criticism levied on the nation of Canada, we know, my friend, does not fall on your shoulders. You, sir, are a patriot. So don't even worry about it. You're always welcome here. And hopefully I hope someday you will enjoy the same level of freedom and liberty that we have down here, which is obviously not perfect, but we are fighting for as much as we can get. Now, take a look at this. President Trump is expected to endorse Ken Paxton over John Cornyn. I mentioned last week that Paxton and President Trump had a meeting. Also, Ken Paxton was at CPAC over the weekend, and Paxton is, in my book, the only candidate that represents making America great again. John Cornyn is part of the deep state rhino establishment, and of course, at this point, John Cornyn has done nothing to get the Save America Act passed. He and John Thune have directly stood in the way of making our election secure. They have stopped themselves short of doing what President Trump wants them to do. As I predicted early on, President Trump is going to have no reason to endorse John Cornyn. Now, what John Cornyn wanted to happen initially is that President Trump made that announcement. He was hoping that Ken Paxton was just going to drop out in the spirit of gentlemanly behavior. But of course, Ken Paxton, this isn't about being a gentleman. This is about representing the people of Texas. And Ken Paxton will also bring President Trump's agenda to the forefront. Now, John Cornyn is not looking good. He is probably polling somewhere around 10% at this point. And if you look at the primary, the initial vote, over 50% of GOP voters voted against John Cornyn. So there really is no possibility that Cornyn is going to win. The GOP national organizations have pulled all support of Cornyn. They're not spending any more money on him. And I don't know that they're spending money on Ken Paxton. They'll probably wait until after the runoff to actually do that. So it is further suggested that Paxton was spotted speaking with President Trump last week. They actually discussed the runoff. It was a positive meeting, someone close to him said. And President Trump stated over the weekend that MAGA, the base, is with Paxton. And President Trump, of course, likes to bet on a winning horse. And at this point, the obvious choice to win is Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton is a good man. I like him. He was the only person initially to come out strong and sue on behalf of all of the states that were affected because of the stolen elections in all of those blue states back in 2020. That tells you everything you need to know. Nobody else had the balls to do that. I need to say thank you so much to Sean Joe for the cookie. Filter Dog 1 says, with a cookie, says the Colonel's daughter. I don't know what that's about. Good Dog 45, thank you for the can. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Thick Ray says, there it is. That's my man. Ha, you can always tell when it's newbies in the house. Give him a good rant. Let me throw the F-bomb for you, Big Daddy. Fuck him if he can't take a joke. Hashtag the truth is loose. Thank you, Thick Ray. Thank you for the cookie. And then another cookie. Then Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Paulie 9363, thank you for the phone. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. And Tolerant Leftist, thank you for the cookie. Did you see retiring that apparently Panicci communicated with Wasserman Schultz DC office 12 times since? Oh my gosh, I forgot to mention that. Thank you so much. Yes, it was determined that Mr. Panicci, the guy who stole that key drive, that encrypted key drive, had been in contact with Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office. That is highly notable, and it is known to the police. That is undoubtedly going to be part of the investigation. So I think this needs to be a much larger thing than just Palm Beach County. I think that the FBI needs to come in on this. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. Super D, thank you for the cookie. Filter Dog says, starve the trolls. Thank you for the cookie. And no thanks, Joe. Thank you for the cookie. Says, hope you had a great weekend, Lisa and Zach. Happy Monday. I look forward to a great week full of info and world stuff. God bless. Be safe. Be safe to you as well, my friend. Thank you so much for that. All right, you guys. Listen, before we jump on to the next story, I do have a very quick word from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee yet, I want to let you know you do have an opportunity to do so. In those starter kits they have available for you, you're going to get some of their bold dark roast. It hits nice and hard. Their smooth medium roast. It goes down a treat. And their Vitality Mushroom Coffee that gives you clean energy and laser focus without the crash. It's all made from the highest quality beans you can get. Single origin, small batch, toxin and mold free. Plus, you're going to get that gold spoon clip, a very strong frother, and a free black 1775 tumbler. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear. It's all yours for just $99. This is for the people who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder if it's actually worth it. It truly is, and to find out for yourself, you gotta go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab one of those starter kits before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Thank you so much to Rumble. All right, now, continuing, and I am gonna go back to my screen here. Don't worry about that. Additionally, with the failure of Senate Republicans, a lot of people in the base have been calling for the removal of John Thune. It is essentially the same thing happening among Republicans in the House. The only problem is that I don't know who else could replace John. I think there's plenty of candidates. There are possible candidates who could be that person, but is there anybody who can get the votes? That is the problem. But Tim Burchett says that it is time to replace John Thune. Now, if we can get Republicans on board with this, I mean, generally it's based on like seniority. Good God. So mad about this. It's based on seniority. Like the next senior person, because Cornyn's going to be leaving, is going to be like Susan Collins. All right. I don't want Susan Collins to be the leader in the Senate. I mean, that woman is obviously a deep state rhino herself. Let's go ahead and take a listen to, okay. And
have you looked
of
at your
course,
credit card?
I'm going to have to wait to get through this freaking commercial. Got to get through this commercial. So let me see what I can jump on to next. Yes. Senator Chris Van Hollen apparently was taken to task by a ABC News anchor for essentially lying about the reasons that Democrats defunded the Department of Homeland Security. Interesting, every single time you see these people called out by their own kind. Now, this was Jonathan Karl. Jonathan Karl asked Chris Van Hollen why the Democrat Party is withholding funding from DHS. Obviously, DHS oversees TSA, FEMA, Coast Guard, number of other agencies. And ICE remains funded to the tune of $75 billion through the One Big Beautiful Bill, which was passed last year. So the fact that they are keeping all of these other agencies starved of money is pretty much ceremonial at this point. Before we finish with that, let's go ahead and hear from Tim Burchett. Because if he's got an idea on who could replace John Thune, how we can do it successfully, I'm willing to hear it.
I think he made a huge mistake, ma'am. 83% of the population supports President Trump at Save America Act, which they should. He ignores that. And you as a member of the media ought to be disgusted at the fact they passed that thing at 2:25 in the morning and left all the other senators kind of hanging. All he had to do is have 5 of his cronies on the floor. He cuts a deal with Schumer. Obviously, the leadership in the Senate, and that's on both sides of the aisle, has a real disgust for this president and House leadership because they didn't even have the guts to call Speaker Mike Johnson and let him know what happened. The whole deal of, you know, the stereotype of Congress is, and it's well deserved, is that we pass stuff in the dark of night because we don't have any guts, and that's clearly what's shown in the Senate leadership. I think they need to get some new leadership over there, in my opinion.
Now, the truth of the matter is, and I've talked about this before, is that J.D. Vance, as the president of the Senate, could take control of the Senate from John Thune. I have to be honest, I think that would be the best bet we have to get things crammed through, because then J.D. could just get rid of the filibuster. He could use himself to make sure that we have 51 votes. We can get it passed, and we can take the current situation that we're dealing with and move past it. John Thune is not that guy. Tim Burchett's correct. Both Thune and Schumer have a disgust not only for the president of the United States, but the people of the United States. And as long as those two guys are in power, they're basically playing table tennis together with the entirety of America sitting in the background, unable to do anything because these guys are running the table. When a government's in a shutdown or a partial shutdown, Burchett said, as this is, we shouldn't get paid. The members of the Senate, he said, my colleagues are spoiled brats. And he said they get paid damn near $200,000 a year for almost no work. Dadgummit, go home. There's really no better way to say it. And when these people leave, they all went through their own private entrance to the airport at where they get to completely skip going through TSA. AOB says, Zach, we love you just the way you are. Thank you. Thank you for that. Mimi2boysx2 says, I will second that. Zach is the best just the way he is. Thank you so much, Mimi. I appreciate it. All right. Now, back to Jonathan Karl confronting Chris Van Hollen about the fact that they are not funding DHS. Again, ICE is funded through the One Big Beautiful Bill. So the fact that there is no ongoing funding for ICE is kind of ceremonial. The money is there either way. So they are starving out TSA, they're starving out FEMA, they're starving out the Coast Guard, they're starving out the rest of DHS, which the only thing that's doing is leaving America unprotected and forcing people to go through these incredible lines at the airport. Believe me, the Democrats know exactly what they're doing. This has been going on for more than 40 days now. This is what the second shutdown of President Trump's second term. The delays at the airport were something that these people, in my opinion, saw ahead of time. And yet the only thing that has been assured throughout all of this is that ICE already has the money. As you said, $75 billion passed in the budget bill last year. So you're holding up the entirety of DHS because you object to ICE and you want changes to ICE. But through it all, ICE continues to have the money it needs. Van Hollen responded by claiming it was a false statement that the Democrats are not holding up all of the money for DHS. We have said repeatedly, we should fund TSA, we should fund FEMA, we should fund the Coast Guard, noting that they are, in fact, holding the funding hostage in order to reform immigration and customs enforcement. And fighting over that additional $10 billion, you were holding the rest of the Department of Homeland Security. Carl fired back. We're not holding it up, he stammered, throwing his arms in the air. No, John, we're not holding it up. We have now voted 10 times, he continued before Carl interrupted him and shut him down. Right, but you're holding it up unless it doesn't include money for ICE. That's just a fact. It is a fact because these people are creeps. They are absolutely horrible. They know exactly what they're doing, and they think that you and your family and your friends are too stupid to catch on to what their plan is. Now, take a look at this. Another thing that John Thune and the other Republicans in the Senate have referred to is the power of the parliamentarian. What if I told you that the parliamentarian was just as ceremonial as 60 votes, or just as ceremonial as a quorum, or just as ceremonial as any of the rules that these people have made up in the last 250 years? Emerald Dragon says, if it's a group of black people gang, Italians mafia, rednecks militia, Hispanics cartel, Jews, a coincidence. Stop being anti-Semitic, LMAO. Fuck them all, Zach. Love you, brother. I love you too, man. That's hilarious. All right, so the VP's ruling on what is approved on a reconciliation bill overrules the parliamentarian's suggestions. Okay, so the conversation that we had last week about using reconciliation to push the SAVE Act through. And the fact of the matter is that the parliamentarian takes a look at the bill. They will strip out anything that isn't directly related to funding, which isn't related to spending money. But it turns out that the parliamentarian's opinion is advisory only. It's not binding. Because the vice president is the president of the Senate, they're the one who actually has power. The presiding officer of the Senate is typically the vice president. So that makes the actual ruling on any Byrd rule, which is what this reconciliation is all based on, an order raised by a senator, and the vice president can choose to follow the parliamentarian's advice or overrule it, effectively deciding what stays in or what is struck from that reconciliation bill. So, if the vice president, as the presiding officer, rules in a way that allows a disputed provision to remain, which is against the advice of the parliamentarian, any senator can appeal that ruling or move to waive the Byrd rule point of order. They can overturn the vice president's decision if they have 60 votes, which is a 3/5 supermajority of the Senate, assuming there are no vacancies. The same thing that they're asking for on voting on anything in the Senate right now. So, Starr says, this is how the Save America Act can be written as budgetary. Number one, pass or amend a budget resolution with specific reconciliation instructions. Both chambers must adopt the same concurrent budget resolution, directing the relevant committees to report legislation changing outlays, revenues, and deficits to set amounts. House Administration Committee and the Senate Rules and Administration Committee, which have jurisdiction over elections, would need instructions for election-related spending changes. Appropriations or Homeland Security Committees would get instructions for DHS and ICE on funding changes. But without those instructions, the bill cannot use reconciliation procedures. Then number two, they would have to rewrite the SAVE provisions as conditions on federal outlays. This is the only potential Byrd compliant path. Again, it has to be something related to the budget. Direct mandates must be removed or reframed. Instead, tie policy changes to federal grants or funding eligibility, so they directly affect outlays. Precedents allow provisions that set terms and conditions under which federal funds are distributed. As an example, if they force everyone in every state to present a voter ID to prove their citizenship, it may become necessary for local jurisdictions to perhaps hire additional people to actually check those IDs. So then you provide a small grant to those local districts, and that grant is contingent on the passage of the SAVE Act. Right there, you have had a budgetary outlay. You have had an expenditure of money, and it is tied directly to the SAVE Act. Now, condition Help America Vote Act grants or new expanded election security grants, which could be used to perhaps get rid of electronic voting machines. States lose eligibility for HAVA funds or receive bonus funds only if they implement proof of citizenship registration, voter ID requirements, data sharing with DHF, the SAVE program, post-election audits, etc. Appropriate new funds to the U.S. Election Assistance Commission to revise the National Voter Registration Form and to states and DHS for verification programs explicitly conditioned on SAVE Act compliance. Fund ballot security or voter roll maintenance tied to citizenship checks. These ideas are exactly what House Administration Chairman Brian Steil has already circulated to the GOP. Finally, number 3. Combine it all into one omnibus reconciliation bill. Part A would have additional DHS and ICE funding or mandatory spending changes, the clear budgetary hook. Part B would be the rewritten, grant-conditioned election provisions from those instructed committees that we mentioned above. So then the bill would end up going through the normal reconciliation process. It would pass the House. That's a simple majority plus the special rule. The Senate debate would be limited to 20 hours. You would get unlimited amendments, vote-a-rama, and then final passage by that simple majority, 51 votes. They said it was impossible because of the parliamentarians' advice, but the VP overrules her. We have several roadmaps as to how this could actually go down, but I personally like this one because it lays out any changes that would need to take place, and it puts direct conditions on it. Help America Vote Act is already present. There are already grants that are tied directly to compliance with HAVA. You could very simply take money away from various jurisdictions if they refuse to comply. They would also be out of compliance with federal law. So yes, this could happen. All right, now, we also have another semi-election related situation here. It's just another Pennsylvania Democrat, but this person is a county commissioner. Looks like they are facing a host of felony charges after prosecutors allege he conducted a number of drug deals from inside government spaces, as well as an official meeting. Now, Zachary Cole Borghi, serving in Lehigh County, was arrested last Wednesday and charged with more than 100 drug-related felonies. Now, investigators allege this 35-year-old used his personal cell phone to coordinate cocaine transactions, which sometimes occurred while inside county buildings. Now, according to additional charging documents, Borghi faces 89 felony counts tied to the alleged use of communication devices to facilitate drug sales, along with 14 additional felony counts for cocaine delivery and 1 count related to distributing psilocybin mushrooms. Prosecutors outlined their case in a 175-page affidavit that reportedly included more than 1,000 text messages exchanged between Borghi and 3 cooperating witnesses. The messages showed detailed negotiations over pricing and arrangements for drug handoffs. Investigators also say that payments for the transactions were conducted through digital platforms, which include Apple Cash and Cash App. I wanted to see if we had a picture of Mr. Borghi. Well, not in this article, but I think we may be able to find it very easily because Zachary Cole Borghi is a fairly unique name. Let's take a look. There he is. That is Zachary Cole Borghi right there. I'm sorry, man. The mayor loves to talk. Read transcripts after DA alleges Zak Paine arranged drug deals during official meetings. Here he is on his phone in a Lehigh County Board of Commissioners meeting, setting up a cocaine transaction while he is meant to be representing the people. Look at that. And of course, they have the exact times of these text messages being sent so they can prove that he sent them during the course of these meetings. Now, these messages show negotiations not only for for marijuana and cocaine, but also psilocybin mushrooms. On October 29th of 2024, Borghi texts someone and says, "Yo, buddy, when are you out of work today?" The cooperating source says, "No work today, brother man." And then says, "I'm free all day." Borghi says, "Word, I need a half, my guy. Can you meet me on my lunch break?" "Yes, when and where?" $65 halves. Cole Borghi says, "Can you meet me at my house at like 11:30? Cooperating source says, "Yes, sir. I will let you know when I'm on my way." Cole Borghi says, "Okay, perfect. I'll let you know if my meeting runs over or shorter." Later, Borghi says, "It's just finishing up. My guy, I'm at City Hall, but should be right there. I'm sorry, man. The mayor loves to talk." The source says, "You're all good, boss. Take your time. I'm in no rush." Borghi says, "If you want, you can put it in the fridge on my front porch and I'll send you the money so you don't have to wait." On April 23rd of this past year, 2025, Cole Borghi says, "I'm at my commissioner meeting right now. Could be done anytime between 8 and 9:30, but I'll hit you up and let you know when I'm coming." Source says, "Okay." Borghi says, "Ending soon, buddy. We're at the closing agenda items." On May 14th of 2025, Cole Borghi orders 3 8-balls of cocaine. Cooperating source says, "I got you. Stand by." Cole Borghi says, "Okay. I will have to meet before my meeting, though, hopefully before 5:30. The source says, "Bro, when? You orders. You have to give me a heads up, especially with the weather today. You got to give me a few hours heads up, buddy." Cole Borghi says, "I got you. I assumed you were in the area." "Nah, bro. I work in New York. I be having my peoples out there." And it's not even spelled correctly. I'm decoding this. "I can have it to you in an hour." Borghi says, "I got you. Let me know if you can meet me. I should be able to be on the meeting through my phone, if anything." In July of 2025, Cole Borghi again orders up 3 8-balls of cocaine. This guy's got an appetite, let me tell you. "Yo, buddy, I got to come by for 3 balls. I got the money early this time, LOL. The source says, "I'll call you in 15 minutes. Stand by." Cole Borghi says, "I can come after work at 4. Is that better?" "Not in a rush. I just wanted to get it set up." "Bet. I got you, son," says the source. Then he says, "I can get your order done, maybe have it ready by 4 if I send break. Now I'm going to go see my guy. Waiting on him now. Trying to get everything in motion." Borghi says, "I'm in a meeting with my boss, buddy. What's up?" He says, "Bet. My bad. Hit me up when you can. Sending the money now, though, buddy." Oh, now, it looks like every single time he orders 3 8-balls of cocaine. Well, right now, Cole Borghi is in jail. He's looking at a $500,000 straight cash bond, and he's probably going to end up in prison. 3 8-balls. Is that like 24 balls? That's, an 8-ball is 3.5 grams. It's like an eighth. So 3, that would be like 12, 13.5 grams of cocaine, I guess. All right. Now, President Trump speaking on Air Force One last night, discussing the building of the big, beautiful new ballroom on the White House property that he's being attacked for. Now, the mainstream media and the left in America, they have said that, oh, the problem is President Trump is tearing down this historic building and instead he's going to build something that's self-serving. Well, he's paying for it himself. It's going to be there for the people of the United States and for future administrations to use at no charge. But it turns out it may be for another reason entirely, because President Trump has exposed the fact that they're actually building a massive military complex underneath the White House and the east wing of the White House, which is where the new ballroom is going to go. Let's take a listen to President Trump describing this secret underground bunker. And you can see here a picture of the ballroom from the outside. Gosh, do they have... Okay, hopefully this is going to go straight to it.
I did something today. We just got these in from the architects. A lot of people are talking about how beautiful the ballroom is. For 150 years, they've wanted to build a ballroom at the White House. And other presidents have wanted it. When we have dignitaries coming like President Xi of China or anybody else, we have very small rooms. They're not big enough to handle the kind of capacity that you need. And this is the same height as the White House. It's an incredible fitting. You see what that is, right? Nice. I'll show you. Here's another.
It's the most beautiful ballroom you're ever going to see. Yeah. Now, they've actually talked about the fact that there was going to be some underground construction, but this is just the most in-depth President Trump has spoken about this up until this point. I am certain that whatever he's building under there, we're not going to learn the true nature of it, and it may likely be something that circumvents the deep state's handle on power in Washington, D.C., giving the office of the president some level of autonomy and accountability over those various agencies for the future.
This is coming from right opposite the Treasury building. Beautiful Capitol, beautiful building. I think it'll be the finest ballroom of its kind anywhere in the world. A lot of people are giving it really good reviews. Some are giving it reviews without even seeing the building, because this just came out today. These pictures were just
deplorable deep, probably like $150 on the high end, maybe $90 if he's your friend.
It's made today. We got rid of, quite a while ago, the stairs on the south side, and it's become really beautiful. But it matches and fits the White House. It's also capable of handling the inauguration. We have all bulletproof glass. We have drone-proof roofs, ceilings, everything's drone-proof and bulletproof. And unfortunately, we're living in an age where that's a good thing. And this is the view from the Treasury, opposite the Treasury.
Trumpet, I mean, whatever tunnels, and there are tunnels under, all around under D.C., I would be surprised if there were any tunnels that they were not aware of. But yeah, I would, it's very possible that the work that's being done at the White House may be destroying some of that stuff. But again, I would be very surprised if there were any tunnel system that was not, already publicly known by the president or the people in the White House, or, I think that it would be difficult to keep something like that from the president. But who knows, man? Obviously, stranger things have happened.
Let me see another one of them. Here's a view on the south with the porch, which is a porch, and it's also a fire stair, basically leading down to the grounds. And that porch will be magnificent, looking in between the columns. And they no longer, we took the stairs out that were on the south side and really replaced them with these stairs. So you have an open porch and you have the closed porch under the columns, overlooking the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, and the Lincoln Memorial / Monument. So that's great. This is a view of the columns as they are going to be made. They're going to be hand carved and they're beautiful. Top of the line, there'll be Corinthian, which is
Corinthian,
considered the best, most beautiful by far. What's your timeline? That's it, timeline. So we're ahead of schedule and under budget. And all of this money, all of the money paid are paid by myself and donors. It's all donors. There's not one dime of government money going into the ballroom. Now the military is building a big complex under the ballroom, which has come out recently because of a stupid lawsuit that was filed. But the military is building a massive complex under the ballroom, and that's under construction, and we're doing very well. So we're ahead of schedule. That's part of it.
So whatever complex they're building underneath the White House, there are already a series of other complexes. There's, part of the continuity of government to ensure that the president and officers of the White House, the cabinet, have the ability to go someplace safe in the event of, say, an attack, a bombing, or a missile strike or something like that. And again, leading from that to other places in Washington, D.C. is a series of tunnels. This would not be the first time that underground construction would have taken place at the White House. You guys may remember during the, this was in George W. Bush's first administration. There was a tremendous amount of construction that was done at the White House. They took out a big piece of the lawn and they built something else under the White House. At that time, I just assumed that it was for some type of continuity of government. But the ballroom itself, sure, great. That's cool that President Trump is building it. What's more interesting to me is this now recently revealed military complex that will be going underneath there. Because, of course, I'm interested to know what it's exactly going to be used for. We're not going to find that out. Maybe at some point in the future that may come out. But I think that ultimately this is what the lawsuit is truly about. They're worried about what President Trump may be doing without their knowledge and the possibilities of how this may further disrupt their plans in the future. Now, on Wednesday, the Supreme Court of the United States is going to be hearing oral arguments in the case that is challenging President Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. I believe that President Trump and the administration have a really good opportunity here. America has an opportunity, but the administration has a good chance of winning this case. So this is related to Executive Order 14160, protecting the meaning and value of American citizenship. This executive order directs all federal agencies, which includes the State Department, DHS, Social Security, all of them, to stop issuing citizenship documents like passports and Social Security numbers to any child born on American soil, unless at least one of those parents is already a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. Now, children who are born to parents that are here illegally, maybe here on temporary visas. So China has a birth tourism program where they will have people basically come here for a period of time, have children, they get citizenship for those children, and then they go back to raise them in China, and then they can come back here and essentially infiltrate. They will no longer be able to get automatic citizenship under the 14th Amendment. Now, the order explicitly interprets the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof to exclude those people whose parents owe primary allegiance to a foreign country. The Supreme Court already granted the review back in December. Multiple lower courts, including federal district judges and appeals courts, had issued nationwide injunctions blocking the president and the administration from implementing this executive order. All of the lower courts so far have ruled that the declared executive order is unconstitutional because all of them were leftist hacks. Citing the 1898 Supreme Court precedent in U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark, which held that a child born in the U.S. to Chinese immigrant parents who were legal residents at the time he was a citizen. Now, oral arguments are actually set for tomorrow, and then the final decision is expected to be given in late June or early July. If the SCOTUS upholds the order, it will be the largest single shift in American immigration policy in the history. We've already achieved that under President Trump so far, but this will be a dramatic shift in the way we interpret immigration policy here in the United States. Anchor babies will be no more. There will be zero incentive for illegals to cross the border just so they can spit a rugrat out on American soil. There will no longer be a birth tourism industry, such as I described a moment ago. Only a handful of countries, mostly in the Americas, similar to the way things have been done here for a while, grant automatic citizenship based solely on the fact that you were here. Most nations in Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia all determine citizenship based on your bloodline or require that at least one of your parents be a citizen or a permanent resident. This is something that President Trump spoke about very early on. There is a national security component to this. There's obviously an economic component to this. The birther tourism industry running out of China allows these people to have children in the United States, take them back to China or any other country, raise them as a citizen of that country, and then bring them here when they're ready to have them infiltrate. And then they can go ahead and gain all of the benefits of being an American citizen without truly being an American citizen. So Kayleigh McEnany, who was the former White House press secretary and currently an anchor on Fox, she said that next week, Supreme Court is slated to revisit President Trump's citizenship executive order, directing all U.S. government agencies to refuse issuing citizenship documents to children born to illegal immigrants or children who do not have at least one parent who is an American or a lawful permanent resident. The only question I have about this is we understand how it will apply to people moving forward, but will it strip citizenship from people who came here just to have babies? Honestly, I don't care if it does. I will be perfectly fine if people came here, if a parent from another country came here, had a child, that child was granted citizenship, and now, as a result of this executive order, it strips that person of that citizenship. I think that that's honestly the way that it should be. That would mean that a lot of people are going to lose citizenship. However, there would obviously be a process for that person to apply for citizenship if they can prove that they will not be a drain on American society. And I think that that's the only way that this can go. People who are not citizens of this country should not be allowed to come to America, have a child on American soil, and have that child be afforded the exact same rights and privileges as somebody whose family grew up here, has been here for generations. And oftentimes, people, if they are illegals, they get traditionally more rights and privileges than if you are from an American family. Saw something today that if you're an illegal alien and you're living in the United States, if you're a DACA recipient, if you are somebody who doesn't have citizenship, you can qualify for tens of thousands, perhaps up to $100,000 in free grant money for you to go to college. There are a number of different non-governmental organizations that will support your efforts to get an education here in the United States of America, and you won't have to pay a damn dime back. That's absolutely wrong. That should not be the way that things work. Also, thank you very much to Filter Dog. It's official. Palm Beach International Airport is now Donald J. Trump International Airport, following Governor Ron DeSantis' signature on HB 919. Now due property taxes, guys. Sean Joe, thank you for 3 cookies. Appreciate you there, buddy. Thank you very much. All right. Now, tragedy very recently. Once again, we have a case of transgender affiliated violence. A woman in LA and her dog were shot to death by her obsessive 27-year-old transgender partner. You can see here the woman in the sunglasses on the right is the one who is dead. A 48-year-old divorced massage therapist who had recently moved to Los Angeles and was living with her much younger transgender romantic partner was shot multiple times and killed in their Beverly Grove home last weekend. It's a domestic dispute, obviously. Carla Maribel Rodriguez was found shot to death inside the $2.4 million house shortly before 8:30 a.m. last Sunday. Police were called due to the reports of gunfire. Rodriguez died after being rushed to the hospital. Her beloved dog Prince was also shot and killed. That's particularly heinous. LA police arrested 27-year-old Emily Emerald Vogt at the restaurant. Vogt, who identifies as a trans man and uses her middle name Emerald, is being held by the Century Regional Detention Center. It's an all-female jail in Linwood on $3.075 million bail. That was increased from initially being $2 million due to the severity of the charges and maybe because she killed an animal in cold blood. The alleged murderer appeared in court on Thursday, but the arraignment has been postponed until April 29th. Now, investigators told Rodriguez's family that Vogt had been very possessive and obsessed with the victim, and that the shooting stemmed from a domestic dispute. Family members believe Rodriguez may have been planning to leave the relationship. The brother of Rodriguez, Joshua Vasquez, 39, confirmed to the New York Post that authorities described Vogt as transitioning to become a man. The family and friends had assumed Rodriguez was dating a biological male. Rodriguez had boasted about Vogt on Facebook, calling her the peanut butter to my jelly, saying that she was in love. The victim's close friend, Jacqueline Dobson, 64, told the Post she had never met Vogt, but remembered Rodriguez calling her wonderful. Dobson admitted she had grown suspicious about how the couple afforded their extravagant lifestyle, which included luxury trips to Aspen and Solvang for Christmas and New Year's, a February getaway to Mammoth, and a 3-day stay at the 5-star Ritz-Carlton in Dana Point overlooking the cliffs. The couple also drove a black Lamborghini Ursus valued at $250,000. Detectives removed a rifle case from the vehicle. Rodriguez's aunt, Marcela Garcia, 59, said no one in the family had ever met Vogt. Garcia noted Rodriguez had told her she was trying something different, but provided no further details about her lover being transgender. After seeing photos online, Garcia described the suspect as a little strange and weird looking. Now, records show Vogt stood to inherit a family trust valued at approximately $2.9 million. It was tied to a commercial property on Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks. The trust was established by Vogt's grandmother, Paula Vogt, and passed to her daughter, Anita Vogt, in 2013. Anita died in 2022, leaving Vogt as the sole heir. Despite this, Rodriguez had told her mother she was paying $1,000 a month to live in this Airbnb property the couple shared. A dog sitter confirmed the couple's odd relationship, saying the pair lived in separate bedrooms, and she also said she had been unaware that Vogt was biologically female. The incident comes amid a high wave of transgender violence in recent years. It just continues to happen over and over again. I guess that's what happens when you give people hormones that do not jive with the gender that they were born with. All right. So we had a couple things about the No Kings protest, but I think we're just going to go ahead and end this with a couple of very quick things. So first of all, No Kings protests around the country over the weekend. Same kind of tired old BS that we've seen in the past. Here, a spray painter at the rally or protest in Los Angeles writes, "Kill your local ICE agent in graffiti." Pretty poor taste and a disgusting use of public resources. What's interesting about this is that Bill Asaley, the U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, issued a notice to the rioters on X who said, "My office has authorized immediate arrest for anyone assaulting a law enforcement officer. You will be arrested and charged with a federal felony. You have been warned." And here is one of those people that Bill Asaley called out. He was arrested over the weekend. And I'm sure that that extends to the man who spray painted "Kill your local ICE agent." Now, Tony Saruga, who is in my book probably the place to go if you want to find out who exactly is heading to these various protests around the country, because his group does a series of geofencing techniques to gather up all of the data for the electronic devices. And he says specifically GPS, No Kings protest, Saturday, March 28th. We had geofenced Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, New York City, Washington, D.C., and the metro area, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Southern California, San Francisco, the Bay Area, Boston, Philadelphia, and Dallas, where some clashes were reported. Without revealing any proprietary technology, tactics, and methods, understand that if someone uses a Faraday bag or even leaves their device at home, we can still reconcile their likely movements and location. In fact, it's after dispersal that the real data exploitation begins. When a large protest happens, especially one that isn't institutionally approved, you can always assume it's being mapped in real time by every intelligence and policing network with overlap to that jurisdiction. They don't watch in the traditional sense. They analyze systems. The modern apparatus doesn't care about shouting crowds. It cares about data signatures. Every phone becomes a tracker beacon. Even if the location off is toggled, the phone still emits continuous metadata. Cell tower handoffs, which triangulates given position within meters. Wi-Fi pings, routers log the MAC addresses. Bluetooth scans give you proximity signals. IMSI catchers, those are stingrays. They mimic cell towers and they force all nearby phones to connect. That gives agencies mass identifier lists and shows movement paths. Device fingerprinting, once a phone's radio signature is logged, it can be matched later, even with a new SIM card. License plate readers tie individuals' physical locations to their digital ones. All of this info gets piped into fusion centers where predictive models weigh social stability indexes and generate risk ratings on protesters. Before, during, and after these protests, my team and I rely on automated social media ingestion. Pattern mapping, bots scan for hashtags, Telegram channels, Discord groups, Signal, and even private messaging servers that leak metadata. Sentiment clustering, AI classifies users as organizers, participants, sympathizers, or more importantly, hostile observers. Social graph scoring. Once a few key IDs are confirmed, algorithms find second and third degree ties, which means families, employers, and affiliations. That's how protests get pre-neutralized, not by arrests, but by psychological operations. Deplatforming, malware, intimidation, messages, or pressure on employers to deter attendance. Even if data is encrypted end-to-end, traffic analysis, meaning who talks to whom and when, exposes networks and leads to the identification of each user. Key groups and demographics in the crowd include data analysis combined with CCTV feeds showing a mix of mostly retired families, including parents with kids, teachers, nurses, social workers, clergy, activists, and residents from various backgrounds. Now, he says he will continue to provide more details after a full review of the data. But Tony is part of an open source intelligence operation, and they're always watching the movements of these people. And what's even more important is that he's in contact with modern day law enforcement and intelligence agencies, part of President Trump's administration. Now, also coming out regarding the No Kings protest is a pretty sweet report put together by Data Republican showing the exact movement of cash going through approximately 500 different groups and then funding these various networks that are paying for the presence of all of these people that you see at all of these protests. There is no such thing as an organic protest, an organic No Kings protest. The signs are paid for by somebody. The travel is paid for by somebody. We're talking about $3 billion in revenue that has been tracked to these 500 different groups that are all basically calling for the same type of communist revolution, a dethroning of President Trump in his second term. According to a copy of the permit for the flagship march in St. Paul, Minnesota, Indivisible was responsible for that. We've spoken about Indivisible before. They are a left-leaning, Democrat-affiliated organization, and they have put together a number of these groups all around the country. Now, the Indivisible is also, of course, funded by George Soros, and they are the lead coordinator for all of these No Kings protests all around the country. There are also, of course, other groups that are funded by Neville Roy Singham. We've spoken about him on a number of occasions. He's been subpoenaed by Congress. He is an American citizen, but he lives in China. He's refused to respond, refused to come in. Over nearly a decade, Singham has financed a constellation of activist institutions promoting this sort of revolutionary socialist policies and politics, frequently collaborating with different protest campaigns, including the People's Forum in New York, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Answer Coalition, and Code Pink. The Code Pink founder, at the end of the day, is his wife, after all, Jody Evans. Now, all of these different groups are sending members to these protests, and one group said they plan to bring a message of revolution to the protest. They may bring the revolutionary message, but they never bring the revolutionary heat because, of course, these people don't really have anything but the money to bring them there. They don't care about anything other than stopping President Trump from making America great again. So in the end, these groups are currently being investigated. It's also been stated by Kash Patel that a mapping of these money networks has long ago taken place. The same type of mapping of these individuals and their relationships has also taken place. Don't know how that's going to pan out, but I would like to think that eventually someday we're probably going to see these groups get taken down. Will to Push Forward said, Zach, did you see that fat freak wearing what looks like a helmet and some leather strap covering the breasts in a wheelchair? Looks like something from the movie Mad Max. No, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I did not see that. I didn't actually look at any of the videos from the protests this time because I felt like all of the protests were basically anemic. There wasn't much going on there. All right, before we complete everything for the day and I read through these final thank yous, I just have a question for you guys. Have you ever watched the news or maybe a big game and thought, you know what, I know how this is going to play out? Well, instead of tweeting about it, you could actually put those predictions to work using Kalshi, because Kalshi is a federally regulated exchange where you trade on real-world events. It's not stocks or anything like that. Think about questions like, will inflation be higher next month? Maybe will the Fed cut rates? Or will your team make the playoffs? Each market is a simple yes or no contract priced between 1 and 99 cents. And if you're right, it settles at $1. That price is basically the crowd's probability of something happening. So if yes is trading at 75 cents, the market is saying there's about a 75% chance that it's going to happen. So you can use it to hedge, to speculate, or just to put some skin in the game on what you already follow every day. And right now they've got a special offer. You can trade $10 and get $10. Just go to Kalshi.com, KALSHI.com/rumble. Deposit and then place your first $10 in trades, and Kalshi will give you an extra $10 to use on the platform. So if you've got a take, don't just post it, trade it. Go to Kalshi.com/rumble to get started today. Once again, that's KALSHI.com/rumble. You can also use the QR code on screen. Thank you very much to them. Thank you to Kitsko as well. Ash spoke with Tina Peters today. We'll report soon. Watch her writings. Yes, I spoke with Ash just after she got off the phone with Tina, and I do know what she spoke about, but I'm not going to speak out of turn. Definitely watch for what Ash says about that conversation. Let me also say thank you very much to Deplorable Farmer for the can, and that will be all. All right, you guys, I will see you either tonight at 10:30 on Baseless Conspiracies or be back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck and God bless.